So what we'll do now is to just record myself doing whatever with this movie, the Blackout, because this is the first time that I'm not quite sure how to approach this. So I'm thinking that watching it live and talking about it live would be actually too complex for me, because there's so much going on in Blackout, even though you only have those two characters who are like on a stage only talking, and you have to say it like only talking, but there's really so much going on with what they are saying and what they are not saying, that the performance, the acting of the actors is so complex, that there's so much to unpack. Also the noises, the sound of their voices, the ambience, and sometimes the ambience reacts along with the character,
He drowned in a sea of red.
reacting to another character or to the other character.
He drowned in Lake Osage.
And then the ambience emphasizes the reaction. But it's only 2 or 3 times, I believe, if I recall correctly. But it's much easier for me in this case to watch the Blackout, so this piece of art, and at the same time read what they are saying, because then it's easier for me to understand. Because then watching this becomes like a reading. So where you read something and then you stop and then you reflect on it and then you continue. And this might be because I'm not a native English speaker. And maybe also this in combination with with the complexity of the story. So it really helped me not only to watch it while reading the transcript, to see, to better understand what they are talking about, but also I also wrote down all of the beats over multiple pages. So 2, 4, and then this 5 pages of writing down the beats to more understand, to better understand, also to be able to connect the themes and the symbols much better. And I also wanted to get more into the writing style of Barry Gifford, and this worked well. So when it took a whole evening, I don't remember, 3 hours maybe. So Blackout is only like 45 minutes long, and I needed 3 or so, maybe even 4 hours. I don't completely remember, I didn't write it down, to watch it, read it, let it sink in, and compare it with the notes I already had written down, and then to write down the beats. And the thing still is, it's been a great experience, and I love that now watching a movie, or in this case watching a TV episode, kind of felt like a reading. And I love this because I really like to read, and this is reading and watching both comes together. So like that, reading a book or reading and watching, listening, excludes each other. It can be complementary, and then you get a better grasp, better understanding, and maybe you also start to understand yourself better. And it's also not for everyone. I mean, I guess you have to be of a certain age, and that means that you already have to have been touched by death tragically to have this connection. And on the other hand, since this is a story about death and life, you are more confronted with the topic itself than anything. You might not want to confront yourself with this, but on the other hand, the story has the power to help a viewer heal. And this is why I think it's also great. So it's really all much focused on the two characters within this constant ambience of darkness, and it's symbolic also. It's a symbolic darkness because both of them, especially the woman character, it's Diane, played by Alicia Witt, who is in darkness because they both suffered from a trauma, or suffered a trauma, and she seems to have been much more traumatized than he. So maybe he couldn't, or didn't let himself. I'm not sure, because the episode doesn't tell you. These are the actors, the dialogue. No, there's nothing. There's also no implication or something reference. You don't know is what you can interpret into it, or what you can tell for yourself, or what you could add as a storyteller. But the facts that you get from this piece of media is that she is more hurt, she's more traumatized, she's more into her own dream, into her own version of it, which also connects with Lost Highway, with the character of Fred Madison, who says something along the lines of it's not the reality as it was, but how I remember it.
What do you mean by that?
How I remembered them. Not necessarily the way they happened.
Or how he wants to remember it, and this is the same. And it's probably no coincidence that Barry Gifford was the writer of Hotel Room, the Blackout episode, and also of Lost Highway. So, and she is more kind of like reclused into her dream, and he is always trying to tell her that her reactions are all okay, and that she is okay, and he kind of tries to, I think, get her out of this dream. And slowly, over the course of around 40 minutes, both of them get out of the dream, of their dreams, what they made of it, of the excuses they told themselves because of feeling guilty, even though they are not guilty, because even parents don't have complete control over their children, and children just do what they do, and then accidents happen. And this is unfortunately an accident which led to the death of the child.
Daddy Junior.
Damn, Bob.
That's right. Dan Buck.
The child is dead, and the parents suffer from this. And over the course of this episode, of this 40 minutes, it's sort of like a psychotherapeutic intervention without a psychotherapist. This is the overarching plot or theme. This is really what's happening with Danny and Diane, symbolized in the blackout, and then in the whole city coming to light and life again. Really from the darkness of living life in a world too big to be fully understood, because they don't understand everything, and they're still having to cope. And they have to make sense of it to the best they can. And I think this is also what psychotherapists do, or priests, or someone, they really try to understand it. And if you are in a religious context, then your advantage might be that the priest, the one that helps you, really can put all of this into like a bigger picture. And it might help, but I also know that it might not help. So this is really, there seems to be no one-size-fits-all answer. And this is so interesting because even though we are in the same boat, there seems still not to be one size fit all answer and approach. But I do think we as human beings have everything, all of this available to us, and we can use it or don't, or not. I mean, too painful to keep in memory. This is also why I think this aspect of too painful to keep in memory is a reason why then, for example, in the story Diane goes insane. And it seems to be that her insanity keeps her sane. That means that parts of her personality go insane and try to push the pain away, but other aspects of the personality therefore stay sane. So in other words, she does not become morbid and wants to end it all, which might have been part of the process, which we are not told in the story. Again, something to interpret or to add on as a possibility. Yes, and living life, I mean, it's too final. It's just at some point it all ends in death for everyone. Doesn't matter when. From this perspective, there's just life, death. Yes, but still, and this is the life-affirming aspect of the story. They wander from this darkness into the light, back into the light of love, of their relationship, and therefore also keeping humanity alive, because they decide they want to have another child. Maybe she is not able to, maybe she is only temporarily not able to, because that's what the story tells us. So she wasn't able to get pregnant, so therefore they seem to have tried before. And this is another thing, maybe she wasn't in the mental clinic, but in a fertility clinic. And now they go to the specialist. Or maybe it was both. So much which you can see in there and do your own work. And this is also what David Lynch and other storytellers always say is aspect of a good story. So it wants to make you think about it and come up with your own pieces. You're not spoon-fed everything, or you're not fed anything at all, because the story is just, we have to win. Okay, maybe I'm a little bit arrogant and elitist in this, because I tend to see action stories not as real stories. So yes, real stories, I know I said it, but when you watch something like Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, it's not completely an action story, but it's still a spy story with lots of action in it. But you also see the traumatized and hurt side of James Bond. While the action segments don't inspire at all, at least not me, the love story of Casino Royale has been very inspiring to me, also helping me, so therefore it's a great story. And Daniel Craig is not even my favorite Bond. And the Daniel Craig era is not even my favorite era, but still Casino Royale is one of the best. At least the love story of it is one of the best Bond stories, many even stories ever, in my experience. Then we get a moment of light.
Whole city's lit up.
And then you look out of the window, and even Diane says, "Danny," and it sounds really more like as a shout of recognition. So she addresses him and she sees him again. Maybe how she saw him before that accident. It's a moment of recognition, but then still we get into a transition into some sort of dip to white instead of black, and then we get into the titles and the ending titles, and there we hear, or still hear, but I think we hear the rather sad title of the hotel room with, at least for this episode, and it's rather sad, and it sounds like it's carried, it's solemn somewhat. It's not as dark as the theme in Mulholland Drive. But you can readily connect these two themes. And you have this sort of Möbius strip also. But let's stay for a moment here. We get a moment of light. It's the affirmation of life in the most tragic circumstances. But then the sadness still stays, and the sadness is not in the faces of the actors or in their ending of that story, but in the titles then. And that's why I said it's that the sadness stays. And it makes this sense of hurt deeper than the moment of joy. And it will take a long time to heal. This is what I get out of it, and somebody else will interpret it differently, I suppose. Yeah, you can see there's much more to unpack than from Space Cop, but Space Cop is a completely different movie, and it's not, I guess it's not intended to make you think as deeply as, for example, Blackout. And that is totally okay. I enjoy both for different reasons. And even Space Cop has a lot of elements where you can say, yeah, Space Cop is pretty much depressed. And it's the death of his wife in the future. But since Space Cop is a comedy, of course, it's all written and then performed to be a joke. Like Space Cop presenting the this framed photo of his wife as being his most prized possession or something, or his most valued possession, and then he simply throws it away. I mean, that's just a joke. But it's also in Space Cop's character. And it's great for what it is. And this is why I so love this episode as well, is they are in darkness, and at the end they get back to the light. And as dark as all of this is, it is really life-affirming, because they don't end their lives, but they struggle with it, with this event, and try to overcome it. And I suppose, judging from the story as it is told, they do overcome this. But in reality, if this was reality and not a piece of media or a story that is told, they will probably see the light and then revert back into their traumas, and then see the light again and revert. So it's always this swinging back and forth, coming to terms with it, and adapting to the situation and to responding to their own feelings of guilt, and having to deal with the opinions or the imagined opinions of others about them and all these things. So it takes a long time, but it's a story, and the message is really, and it's not a message in the sense of ideology. But it's a message like that. It's a moral of the story. This is really telling you, as bad as it is, in a sense, it is okay, and I know how that sounds, but it is okay, and you have to continue your life, and you can continue your life. And this is really the message of this story, and this is why I love it so much. As someone who, of course, is a living being in this world, I, of course, have also suffered trauma, probably also inflicted trauma. Not that it is good or something to be proud of. So it sucks, of course. And this is, of course, something I have to deal with, as well as the others. And so what this story then really is telling me, as bad as all of this is, you can learn something from it, and then you can move on and continue with your life, and be a better person. Of course, within the context of the story, it would rather be not, the message would not be a better person, also not take more control of your child or children or anything of this like this, but more continue and have another child. That is what this story seems to say. As much as the story is giving, it doesn't have these. I mean, it does have its key moments, yeah, but it's not. It's all. It's not done for effect. It's not those mega over the top moments that will be memorable for eternity. Even though they are telling the story, like for example in Star Wars or 2001: A Space Odyssey, where everything is grand, or Dune, it's a really grand world, and so everything is grand. This is really more of a really private story, and it's privately told, and the two characters are only with themselves, and of course with the camera and the viewer in a hotel room. So it's all private and small and intimate. So they have their moments, but they are not really grand moments where you say, I have to show this to you. But nonetheless, it's all great, well made in terms of blocking and business, camera movements. And you can see that David Lynch is a great storyteller in that sense, because you could think of movies like Fire Walk With Me or the Twin Peaks series or Reassurance or Dune or so, which are all bigger. Even Eraserhead is bigger than Hotel Room. But Lynch really adapts himself to telling the story, so you don't have anything grand in it or anything where you think, oh, this is the director trying to show off his abilities or something. None of it. But it's also the symbolism in it, like the hotel room itself. I mean, the blackout itself, like there's no light. The whole city is dark, and it creates this ambience, but also this symbolism of being in the dark. And we see this in this episode a lot of times, like for example when Danny enters the hotel room for the first time, and he and the bellboy, they both have lamps with them, and then it opens, and then you see how the door opens and how it's all dark, and then the light of the lamps hits Diane in her face, and it seems to hurt her eyes, so she averts her eyes, and you can get symbolism out of this. And the way it's shot, it really looks like symbolism, like that she kind of tries to avoid the light. Of course she can't, because her mind is active and is trying to deal with the trauma, but she does try to stay in the dark. Yes, and it's all well combined into its one theme. This is what I think. It's really, really great. It all leads up to this moment of self-revelation and life affirmation. The themes, death and life, love and relationship. And they reaffirm their love for each other, though it's also not only trying to dealing with the trauma, but also trying to keep the relationship together, because this trauma is so explosive, it could have disconnected them and divorced them or separated them completely, but it didn't, and they are both of them hold tight, and they want to be together, and this is also great. It's just really, really great. It's the message could also be that love, real love or true love, is stronger than death. It overcomes it. Then they will probably be together for their whole life. We also have this water motive. It's a sea of red. She mentions a sea of red, which he then corrects her. It's the Red Sea where he has been in the Navy, which then turns out to be either a lie to sort of complement her delusion, but more in the sense of trying to keep her sane, interestingly, because it's actually that those delusions, which are insanity, but they might actually help to keep her sane or as sane as possible. But it's not totally, but I think there's also this, I mean, it's not entirely clear, but it's okay. Then we have this symbol of the Chinese fish in the Lake Osage rain. The Chinese fish symbol for the moment she was traumatized and went crazy. Question mark. Might be. But the point is, it's a sea of red because that's where it was in a lake and in a body of water where the child died. And apparently they tried to rescue him, but weren't able. And as she tells this story, how the Chinese fish emerged from the water, from the sea of red, was Danny emerging, trying to rescue the child, Danbok, and the Chinese fish because of the truth-telling, fortune-telling. And the fortune was very bad luck. The light motive, lamps, candles, blinded by the light, as I already said. She also mentions the Christmas tree, like being in the Christmas tree, and it's all ornaments, which might mean that is all appearance, and she's looking at lights inside herself, but there are no lights. There must be lights. I guess being in the darkness and telling about the darkness doesn't mean that there are no lights, as we later see as well. But still we have those light motives, so that is this light motive. We also have light in form of candles on something that looks like an altar in the hotel room. Then she mentions the lights at the houses around the lake. And it makes also sense that she wants to stay in the darkness, because it was also those lights at the house around the lake, because it was nighttime when Danbok died, that she saw the dead Danbok. And so it makes total sense, because it's something you don't want to see, that you have to see. First, when we enter the hotel room, we see then also the hotel room, like this mirror that looks like an altar and the window, and it's seen, I think, more out of her perspective. And then later on to the end of the story, we get this view of the hotel room again, and Diane is walking through this room, and she has this candle, and perhaps it's also meant to symbolic again, so that we can see it now. She is beginning to see the truth in her, and then she collapses, and probably because the truth is just so brutal that she just collapses. If I remember correctly, Danbok died, or they found him in the morning, and it was the lights in the darkness around the houses, and maybe there were all sorts of people also around them, because they must have stirred some attention, but they don't mention it. So, and then the sun rose, and it's, as we all know, as we all know, a sunrise or a sunset makes the horizon appear red. But to her it all looked like fire in the sea of red, so it must all be like a fire in her mind because of the trauma, because of that event. The hotel room as a symbol for the soul. or however you want to call it, because I don't know how to call it others. So but somehow, because the hotel room is inhabited by humans, and then they leave. There's something transient about it, and I believe that the human being is also its transient time in life, and then you die. But you either, I'm not sure, but there's something, and then this soul, this light in you dies. I'm not sure, really, but the hotel room as a symbol for life and being, humans being in this hotel room, kind of like we're only here on a visit. So we live here, but then we move on, or maybe we don't move on, I don't know. Then we have the Nanny Moon, I think. Diane mentions Nanny Moon, and this seems to be a symbol for the dream, or for the dream state, for the night. Maybe also for the relief from pain, because it's a nanny, and usually nannies are there to care for the baby, or for the young child, like a mother. And therefore it's also a relief from pain. Might be a beautiful state of mind or being, as it means also freedom from knowing the truth and from pain, I believe. And as I said before, insanity seems to be something desirable. So like it's keeping her sane. It doesn't. It's a contradiction, logically speaking, that the insanity keeps you sane, but it might be that the insanity keeps you from killing yourself or from damaging or something. It's just the mind tries to protect itself. But it also might be that the insanity becomes so strong that you simply want to kill yourself, or the insanity is desirable because it distracts you from the pain. But if you don't get out of the insanity and you don't feel the pain, at least in doses, so slowly but surely, then you either stay insane or become more insane, or I don't know, maybe then you just kind of isolate yourself and live in this darkness. But it's not really living, it's just vegetating. So this is why I say it's a contradiction, because of course this insanity isn't really desirable, but it might be the better option. And it's not something that you choose, it's just something that happens, like when you're hungry and you have to eat something, and then you are hit with something traumatic, and then you deal with it and you become insane. But there might be a very small margin that insanity might still be more desirable than really being in that pain for too long. It's just a thought, I don't know, but maybe it is. The story seems to kind of suggest this, and it might be also an experience I had myself. The fawns and the Chinese restaurant fawns. So I don't know about the symbol, but I know that Diane likens her imagined daughters to be fawns, or as fawns, and then we have the Chinese restaurant fawns. I guess that her mind connects these aspects or these elements. So there really is no escape from reality, even though your mind tries to disconnect you. Similar to what Pete Dayton and the other character, Fred Madison, except that apparently the Madison character completely disconnects in his mind, but still you see how reality, or his memory of reality seeps into it, kind of intrudes, and it intrudes, and then he has his headache. I'm referring to the scene where Pete Dayton is working under the car, and his co-worker, played by Jack Nance. Yes. Even though the Jack Nance character says he likes this music, but it's the music that we hear in the beginning, where the Madison character is in the Luna Lounge and playing this really weird saxophone solo, which sounds really like something suppressed and on the top of something like really high emotions, but it's not, I don't know, it's really something that's really tense. And I think this also then leads to the murder of his wife. But what I wanted to say is this saxophone solo, it does intrude into the Pete Dayton dream, or into the dream of being Pete Dayton, and you have this, and this is similar to this story because they really can't, even though Diane kind of delusionally sees Chinese fish emerging, it's just what her mind made of it, and it's still relatively intruding into her delusion. That Chinese fish there must be something symbol in there, because Danny brings Chinese food and the Chinese people are all really nice to him. And they seem to kind of emphasize this. There is something very important about it. And then she makes something of the Chinese fish, maybe because of the fortune tellies and the fortune cookies. I don't know. It's not spelled out, and this really seems to be something more of interpretation, but you have these connections still. So yeah, it's kind of the same with the opening of this episode where the bellboy leads Danny into the hotel room. Now you could wonder what the bellboy might represent. Maybe he's like a ferryman who leads the dead into Hades. That might be a symbol. He's very comforting still, yes, and reassuring them that everything is safe in here and it should all be okay soon. And they are talking about where Danny comes from, and if the bellboy has been, where Danny comes from. So there seems nothing really important in that conversation. And maybe the important thing is really just the passage, so to speak, from the outside world into this inside world, and to get us a little bit familiar with the situation, we as the audience with the situation, and with the situation of the city and their situation, Danny's and Diane's situation, to ease us into the story. The blacked out hotel room or blacked out city acts as a symbol for accidents, as nature just does what nature does, if it actually does something. Because now I'm assigning a will and an agency to nature. Maybe just what happens, I don't know. Maybe these things just happen and it's an accident, so we have this blackout, and probably people also died during that blackout in the city, and it's just as accidental as being bitten by a snake or not realizing that there has been something, or maybe in this case Dave Famine, if he existed, wanted to die. We don't know. And this is probably what life mostly is, a reaction to something that is. And humans seem to tend to react if the impact of the event is just too strong. Then humans seem to tend to react, or maybe some humans, I don't know, maybe there are people that are like the Captain Kirks and the Captain Hornblower and the James Bond types who really are able to cope with these things, but I don't think so. If I remember correctly from the novel, yeah, I do think that even the James Bond type of characters, I mean, to be honest, the Fleming knows, and he actually was a spy, so he must have had some hefty experiences during his service. So even the things, even the novels, they hint more to the fact that James Bond is a real person with feelings, whereas the Bond movies more point to some superhuman type of person. But even the James Bond and Roger Moore era, you always have these or the Timothy Dalton. I think we only see Bond really cope more, also him coping more on screen during the Daniel Craig era, where we mourns death of Vesper, but also the seeming betrayal by Vesper, Lynn. So I think, so the point I'm trying to make here is that even the tough types, or like the Captain Kirk types, and probably also Hornblower, I don't know, I have not read much in the Captain Hornblower omnibus. But I have watched Star Trek a lot, and Captain Kirk suffers a lot. But maybe the difference is that they don't suffer too long and too hard. And maybe they don't go too insane, whereas someone like Diane in the Blackout episode, who seems to be rather of the very sensitive type, and that might be wrong, I don't know. But maybe she is the type of person who is more prone to insanity. And let's not forget the type of... This is also a question, so, and because I don't know it, but I would say that the death of your own child is much more intensive than losing, I guess, your wife or your girlfriend or other loved ones, parents maybe even, I don't know. This is just a question I'm posing to you, also to myself, but I think I will never know the answer to this, but maybe you do. Not every sentence has to be super ultra meaningful, and I wouldn't even call that weakness, but I do see how some of those lines, which apparently mean something or mean more than they actually do, could or would lead someone to obsess over every small line in detail and really trying to find connections which are not there, and then come up with really insane, probably really insane ideas. Someone mentioned schizophrenic ideas. Well, it might be because they're trying to connect something which is not to be connected, and what comes out of it is just something insane. But still, it probably means something to the person which makes those insane connections. Is that healthy or good? No idea. I mean, it's not a negative. It's only a negative if you are used to fast-paced storytelling, like YouTube or social media, TikTok, editing, where the screen is cluttered with events that don't make sense or that are just distracting, but the algorithm demands it, or whatever bullshit excuse. Or because you try to trick the human mind into being engaged with something that is just sensation and not content, yeah, and something like Blackout is really content. It's really great. And if you're someone who comes from this social media, this fast-paced storytelling, then it might be boring to you. Is maybe Diane somehow blaming Danny for the death of their son? And she probably blames herself, but she seems to attack him at some point, and she seems to attack him with the story about Danny's probably imagined friend Rinky Dink, but at the same time, since he reacts to it, Rinky Dink must be someone Danny knew. Maybe the story about being a navy in the Red Sea, that part is imagined or delusional or a lie, or that the story does not tell, and that's great, because now you can interpret it like this. You can wonder if it was something he came up with, a delusion, an imagination, something he made out of the story, or maybe if it was something he used as a lie to comfort her in her insanity. Because As you might know, if someone is insane, delusional specifically, you cannot argue against it completely. But maybe you can kind of take a step towards them and use their delusion as a starting point to then get them out of the delusion. This is the thing with the... No, it's not. And then get them out of the delusion. At least it's what you can try. And this is apparently what is happening. But still, since Danny reacts visibly to the story about Rinky Dink, and Diane almost seeming like she enjoys telling her this. So maybe she gets some enjoyment out of it for some reason. And this is, again, another situation where you can just interpret it, where you don't have a clear telling. You can say maybe she enjoys it, maybe she enjoys it, maybe she doesn't. Maybe she enjoys it, for one, because she's blaming him and she kind of wants to take revenge. She thinks her pain. She might think that her pain stems from Danny not being able to rescue their child. And so she wants to get back at him. So she wants to inflict pain on him. That would be one possible interpretation, because she also tells him in detail how his friend supposedly died. So maybe it's imagined, but it might also be a great example of how even delusions are connected with bodily expressions, in this case pain. And so even though the story is about Rinky Dink is not no, it is based on reality, but it is not reality. It's something that they made up, how it went. But still, this connection is there, and therefore Danny has to react. So you don't really know it. Could also be that she does not enjoy it, but that Rinky Dink was someone that they both knew, and she liked Rinky Dink. That might also be. So this is the thing with these very complex emotions, that both Crispin Glover and Alicia would express. It's not completely clear, and so it gives the audience much to interpret. So it could be that they are fighting, because it really seems like they are fighting at some point. And this might be, I mean, if she blames him and maybe he blames her also, but she covers it up or something, and so they fight. And the thing is, instead of fighting back too much, he really just tries to comfort her and to reassure her all the time. And this in the end prompts her to reassure him when he shows his weakness. He feels useless.
I have to admit, I've been feeling a little desperate as of late.
In this relationship.
It's a damn hard thing to take, feeling useless.
And then she reassures him and she tells him no.
You don't have a useless bone in your body, Danny.
And this is then when they really connect or reconnect completely. And this is also shortly before the blackout of the city is solved. There must be another word, an actual English expression, but I don't find it. Whatever. So I think Danny is really caring for Diane. Diane is also caring for Danny, which we then later on see or hear or see both of it. It's just that Diane is in a personal situation where she doesn't seem to be too able to care or show care, and she also seems to be so unsure at first. If this has happened, or often you feel like this is the question one would ask if somebody has died. Well, like, I can't believe he or she is dead. Is that real? Is Is the person really dead? I cannot fathom it. And I think, and then at the end, of course, the question is, yes, this person is dead. Yeah, this is what I think. He has to be the strong one in the relationship with Diane, because Diane is much more hurt, and therefore she is much more incapable to just go about her everyday life, I guess. And they mention later on that she has been in a clinic, and they refer to this specialist, I suppose, in New York. So what I think is she was in a mental hospital, or maybe in a hospital, in the mental facility, and they then referred her to the specialist in New York, and that's why they are there. First, it's all about her, and Danny is really all the time trying to reassure her and lead her to the present situation and to what has happened. And I think he's also cautiously trying to heal the wounds from the past. And he's always soft-spoken and eager to bridge this gap that seems to be between them. As I said, they probably, or very likely, are struggling not only because of the death, or not only because their child is dead, but also because their relationship is in danger because of this. These are the stakes. And when they don't succeed, then they will probably separate. Yeah, also, I was wondering if they are exchanging these sort of death stories, because they both tell death stories for many reasons, one of them being to find comfort in the death stories of other people or concerning other people, where they really say something like, yeah, look, this man died, but it was an accident, and nobody could have foreseen this. And I think this is one reason. It's kind of like how why I connect with Blackout so much, because I have experienced death myself as a living being with many decades of life, or being alive, and I connect with this story and these stories because I'm in the same situation. Like, how could this happen, and why did it happen? Could I have done something? Could I have done something better? Maybe my emotions took the better of me, and there's of course blame, self-blame, guilt, and all these emotions. And it helps me to see that other human beings are in the same situation, so I have to still deal with it. But as always, interestingly, there's always comfort in others feel pain as well. And I always, maybe I am hyper moralizing life, but the point still is others feel that as well, and we are all in the same boat, as the expression goes. And there's so much that you cannot foresee. If you could foresee everything, and would you do everything, which is, by the way, also the big question in the short story, the story of your life, on which the movie Arrival was based. And to be honest, I find the short story much more engaging and interesting, because it does focus much more on this question. If you knew your future, and if you knew that someone you deeply love would die, would you still, in this case, oh yes, in this case also your own child, your daughter, if you knew that, would you still want to be pregnant? Because it's told out of the perspective of the mother, of the woman. Would you still have the child? And the answer is yes. This is the answer the story is giving you, but it's also the answer that you can give yourself, and it's also the answer that Blackout is giving you. So it's, as I said, all life-affirming. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's just a struggle they're both in, and it might appear that they are fighting. But they could have said something completely different. Like, for example, yeah, it is your fault it is our fault. Maybe that would also be different. Maybe I do think they are fighting or struggling with this question. Is it our fault? We are the parents. Yes, it is our fault. What could have we done better? The answer is probably nothing. The story itself does not answer this question. And I think, well, no, it does answer this question in a sense, because...
Do you recall how it happened?
You and me was in an intimate way. Down on the shore at Lake Osage. We thought the boy was asleep. But he got up, went into the water without making any sound we could hear.
And then he drowned. And it might have been that he... I mean, this drowning must have been accidental. Also, it does not seem... Also, neither the story makes any reference to suicide. It also doesn't give us any clue that these parents are horrible parents, so that a child would want to commit suicide, but children usually don't. To be honest, I have no idea, but I don't think I've ever heard of children wanting or committing suicide. But I might be completely wrong about that. I have to look into that, but I want to just bring this idea forth now and for the video. But we don't get any indication that those parents are horrible parents, and a child would want to drown themselves in the lake or something. So so they're blaming, but they're saying it was an accident and we could not have done anything, and this is just how it is, as horrible as it is, as helpless this makes us feel also, it is, unfortunately, as it is. Or maybe, I mean, you can get consolation or comfort out of this, because then you can say, yeah, it sucks, but we cannot control the life of our child. We don't even have control much of a child's life. We don't have control. We don't even have full control over our own lives. So, and it might be for the good, even though this is kind of running contrary how humans want to be in life. We are not like James Bond or like James Bond in a James Bond story. And even James Bond is not in full control of everything. I mean, his wife, no mates, both, or let's say it like this, both of his great loves of his life, he got 2 loves of his life, both of them die, and he could not have done anything about it. So this is just how life is. The other question combined with this is, or are they telling each other death stories as response of their own psyches in order to heal the trauma? And I would say yes, absolutely. Just going from what I just explained in detail, yes. And it might be both. And this is also, again, this complexity, the complexity of emotions. It's a big struggle for them to keep their relationship intact, and it's not only not only about survival or about coping, about the child not having been able to survive and not to be rescued, but also the survival of their own relationship. And now they do have time to cope, both of them together, because they're now in a situation where they can't do much else except for wait for the light to be turned on again, and therefore they are in this darkness together, and they find out of the darkness together. Dave's famine story. Dave. Also, genau, Dave Famine. Maybe those weird names are clues if those characters exist or not. But I guess Dan Bock. I don't know, Dan Bock is a real name. I looked it up, it's not It's not some joke name or anything. It's a real name. So, but I mean, I know Rinky Dink. If I remember correctly, Rinky Dink is also some character. But Dave Famine sounds really weird, and even for a foreigner, a German like myself, Dave Famine does sound weird. At least unusual. So whatever, the point here is that the story of Dave Famine, maybe because also famines can just happen. So you don't, you have your, if you're a farmer, you have your crops, yeah, and then it does not rain for 2 months. It's probably not feasible anyway. And you run out of water, and then the crops die. And this just might happen. So you're not always, and this is one of the themes also, I think, it's control. You are not in control, not completely. Not even the control freaks in the government. So anyway, Danny tells the story of Dave Famine as an example of an accidental death. And I think Dan Bog's death was accidental too, because, as I said, I don't think the child wanted to kill itself or himself, because there is no indication that Diane and Danny are horrible parents, and so maybe Dan Bog just wanted to visit the water. Maybe it was a hot summer night, so he wanted to go into the water. The fire horizon might also be a clue to that, because usually the horizon doesn't look like it's on fire in winter, for example. It does in summer. So maybe Dan Bog just wanted to cool himself down with the help of the water, and then he slipped and banged his head, and then he drowned. That would be an explanation. Well, what it could also be possible is this Dave Famine is maybe another imagined or delusional, also in delusion imagined character. Maybe all of those are, and they're still connected with the pain of the death of the son. So this might also have been happened, so that Dan Bog was bitten by a snake and died this way. It didn't drown, or then drowned, but still it was accidental. Maybe this is also how Danny copes with the death of his own son, through the stories, through the examples of the death of others. We do get a sense of location and of its setting in place and time. There didn't need to be much world building. What is important for the audience is that we know that these two people are visitors in New York, that they come from a rural area, I believe, but this is not that important. I guess maybe it is, I don't know. Maybe it's more important for Americans who live in these areas, but still, I do think, even as a German, also meaning as someone who is not in the States, we have rural areas and we have city areas, metropolitan areas. I mean, in the end, what it might mean is simply that the rural areas are mostly behind, or usually behind, developments in metropolitan areas, for the good and for the bad. But we only need to know they are there because of her visiting the specialist to help her cope with the death of her child, that the city is in the blackout state, so that we know why, and the realistic reason, and this also then becomes a symbol. Oh yes, and then we need to get a little bit of sense of locations where it happened, like there's a lake, specifically Lake Osage, which means nothing to me because I've never been there. And that this child drowned there, and that the situation was night, that the parents were sleeping. These little tidbits of information are all we need. We don't need a full description of how Lake Osage looks like, and that there are maybe dangerous cliffs I guess clever is the wrong word, but that or that the water is clean or whatever. Nothing of this matters. I do wonder if the setting in the time, also in 1936, I think, if that is too important. Danny was probably not in the Navy at the Red Sea because there was no war at this point. It's interesting always to see that people, so that lives materially changed, also culturally, and I think they changed culturally along with the material of the world, with the technologies and how this changes, and because people have other possibilities, they can travel more, for example, and then they can migrate, they can look for a place where they actually want to be, and so on and so forth, and therefore cultures change as well. Not so much the moral values, so the basic ones, so like, I don't know, death in the family is something horrific, and it's the average, or the big majority of people would feel like that, even if they don't like parents or their child, unless it's a psychopath who really wants to, or abuses you, then you would be like, oh, it's good that the person died, but unless it's in a normal range, the majority of people would actually mourn the death or the loss of their loved ones. And it's the same in 1936, also how people cope with it. This is the big constant in human life. And this is why I also think that books like the Bible, or the stories, many stories of the Bible, or national poems, for example, like Beowulf, can still have a great impact on us today, because we are, except that we are in a different technological spot and we have gathered much knowledge of the world, and therefore much has changed also culturally, but still we are in the same situation as every other generation of people before. There's always, we are in this world and we have to survive. We kind of want to survive, even though the brain might think there's no meaning in life, but still we kind of want to survive, and so on and so forth. So these sort of aspects, they did not change, and I would even suppose that they won't change ever, unless the transhumanists win, and but then we are not humans anymore, but something that is beyond human. And I don't think that normal people, and yes, I do say normal people, would want that, because it just sucks. It seems that only a psychopath or sociopath and those dark triad or dark tetrad characters would want something like that. But those people are not normal, and they are also a minority, fortunately. But of course, Blackout is much more, it's much more heightened. It's not played for laughs at all. Not even sure if humor is in it, maybe in the weird names, but all in all, if there is humor in it, it's all very, very subdued, and I don't get it. So it's dark, and the performances by Crispin and Alicia Witt, they seem to be really heightened as well, but they really are complex, at least also, and they do really bring forth all the plight, all the pain, but also all the positive emotions, which might run contradictory to what one would expect. But I think in this situation it really, really works well. You can't have flat characters. You need those very complex and deep characters. And Alicia Witt and Crispin I think are really perfect for these roles. So kudos. This note here I'm reading says that I appreciate Blackout first and foremost because of the writing. how Barry Gifford circles around the truth, bringing us closer and closer until we know what happened to make Diane blind in the dark. Apparently also Crispin Glover, who has a little bit more grasp. It seems like he knows what has happened, but there are other aspects or other depths which he tend to kind of like process similar to her. Yes, and also what I really like about Barry Gifford's writing is the efficiency of the storytelling, because we get all the necessary information to be with the characters in their world, but not more. We don't need more information. This fragmented style, I think this is kind of taken one step further in Rabbits, the David Lynch short film, where I would say really parts are missing. So if you would take this script of Blackout and then would delete lines out of it and or cut it the way that lines are missing, then you would think, then you would have really difficult, and it would be really difficult to connect all the information. But the way it's done here with Blackout, you are able to connect, and in the end they spell it out. This is the part where then Danny confronts her and says, you know, this happened, and she's like, yes, I know. And it's still the story, because what is the story? They're coming from this dark place of their insanity, of having to cope with the death of their son, and they slowly but surely get through to the reality. Yeah, I think I've touched on this already. So it's directed by David Lynch, but you don't have the feeling that he's supplying Lynchian weirdness for the weirdness sake or whatever. He really tells the story efficiently as the story demands it from him. So he's a storyteller, and he's not David Lynch showing off being David Lynch or whatever. And that's what I think is one of the major aspects why David Lynch is so great. The weirdness really comes more from Diane, from phrases, or let's say from phrases like the sea of red, or like being in a Christmas tree and it's all ornaments and these sort of things. They don't make sense at first. Of course, also the way she and he behave, both of them, because it's so complex, and you're like, what is wrong with these people, or what is wrong with her? And then you slowly but surely understand what is wrong, and then you're like, oh, okay, now this makes total sense to me. Now they appear like normal and relatable human beings. Over the course of the story, we're being enabled to empathize and sympathize with them more and more. And at the end, we can see that all of this can happen to any one of us. Is what I say. It's you connect with this, it becomes clearer and clearer what actually has happened. It does not sound like something insane, like a Chinese fish rose out of the water and told me my fortune. It's more like Danny emerged from the water with a dead child, and this sort of told her the bad luck of the situation, or the badness of the situation. And here I will read a quote by Barry Gifford, where he's talking about David Lynch. I think this quote tells us a little bit about how Barry Gifford and also David Lynch went about creating the Blackout episode. And it's from the Art Forum website, no idea. I found this via the internet search, and I think it gives us some insights into Blackout. So let's start. Dave believed, and apparently Barry Gifford called David Lynch Dave. So Dave believed, as I do, that films are or should be like dreams. When you enter the movie theater, the real world is shut out. Now that you are in the thrall of the filmmakers, you must surrender and allow the film's images to wash over you, to drown in them for 2 hours or so. And Dave is relentless in the way he uses imagery. Lost Highway from 1997, Like Blue Velvet 1986, or Eraserhead 1977, especially is filled with unforgettable images. And we are set in a place, a city, a landscape that is neither here nor there, a timeless form presented within a non-linear structure, a Möbius strip curling back and under, running parallel to itself before again becoming connected. Only there's a kind of coda, but that's how it goes with psychogenic fugues. Figure it out for yourself, you'll feel better later. And if you don't figure it out, you'll feel even better. Trust us. So I disagree with the rest of the... I disagree with the last sentence. You'll feel better if you don't figure it out. Trust us. No, I don't think so. I think if you don't figure out, you could get into a state where you think like, oh, maybe I'm insane, or where it makes you insane because when you obsess over it and you want to make sense of it and you're trying to, and then you get into those schizophrenic interpretations. So therefore, no. Blackout isn't necessarily a dream, or does not necessarily feel like a dream. It does have these qualities. We also have the soundtrack, or the music by Angelo Badalamenti. It reminds you of Twin Peaks, of the Twin Peaks series. Those strings, they usually use those for more dreamlike sequences, or something that is sad and depressed, and you always have this sort of orchestration in Mulholland Drive. I don't remember it being prominent in Lost Highway. Lost Highway does sound more rock influenced, but I might be wrong, I don't know. But I do vividly remember this sort of orchestration from Mulholland Drive, specifically in the main theme, which is much sadder and darker and comes to no conclusion. This is a kind of technique I think Lynch used a lot of times, at least now in Hotel Room, also in Lost Highway, also in Mulholland Drive, at least at some point where we start with the drive in the limo, and then we don't end
We don't stop here.
with the drive in the limo, but the revelation of what probably has rather happened in reality. We don't know it because it's neither confirmed nor denied. But this is sort of there's this sort of circling, and then we see what really happened. And we also have this in an empire. Also the record in Little Empire, and it can also be connected with the record in Twin Peaks. So, and this is an interesting thematic connection between those pieces of media, and you'll find this over and over again in David Lynch's work, where he connects something from the beginning with something at the end. And here we have this circling around in the script, or in the revelation of what has actually happened, connect to Mulholland Drive, where we then circle around to see what actually has happened. The humiliation, the destruction of a relationship, and then the death of two people. And here we have more or less the other way around. They circle around the topic of death and what has happened, and they circle and circle until we reach to that point where we exactly know what has happened, and they manage to get around and connect again, and this is where the story ends. The ending theme, which suggests sadness and solemnity, it's not telling us that it all ended in sadness. There is still a sadness, but the story itself, before it dips to white, tells us that they have found the light. And I guess you could then say probably they will have to circle around again and maybe again and maybe they have to circle around all the time until the end of time because of this so hefty, this destructive, traumatic experience that will always be part of their relationship forever and ever and ever. And then before that, everything does make sense, but only if you can connect it with the revelation of what actually happened. Then it makes sense. And rabbits, in that sense, is even harder to understand because there is so much missing, I think. And here in Blackout, we get everything we need to know, and not more, but also not less. And they're also open enough for your interpretation. Mulholland Drive is much more open for your interpretation than Blackout. Very, very obviously, even though you have this plot and it's all coherent, but it's still very much dreamlike. And Blackout is not that dreamlike, where you say, okay, I'm lost in the second or third or fourth layer of the dream, a dream within a dream within a dream or whatever. Blackout seems to be rather straightforward, being like in one level or dimension of dreaminess, and it's just what their own imaginations or delusions. So we know we are with them in the reality of the hotel room, and the delusions or the imaginations or the fantasies of which they are telling us, the audience, they are inside of their heads. So we know this in something like Mulholland Drive or also even Lost Highway. It's not always completely clear if we are now in reality with the characters, also in, let's say, in our reality, or if we are in the mind of a character and they experience reality. So to illustrate that with Blackout, you would see, you would be with them in a hotel room, and then maybe we would see Lake Osage or the Red Sea and all these things, but we wouldn't be sure if this is a telling of a reality or if this is the dream also. Of course, with Mulholland Drive, I mean, Winkies would be, but we also see them at Winkies. So with Blackout, it would rather be, I guess, you see them first in this hotel room and you have this feeling you are with them in the hotel room. And then all of a sudden you are still in this hotel room, but you don't know anymore if you're with them or if you're in their heads where they see the hotel room. So I think the problem would be still that the hotel room itself is too empty of everything. It's too dark, so to speak, to contain a story within a story or a dream within a dream. But I might be wrong, and someone like David Lynch would prove me wrong. No idea. I still feel like that hotel room or Blackout is way less challenging to understand than movies like Lost Highway or Mulholland Drive or Inland Empire. It's a really endlessly inspiring source, that David Lynch. Also these kind of stories. And I would say because they are dark and they allow themselves to be dark. Though comedy is great, but comedy also maybe the merit of comedy is more to make you laugh and kind of make you to relieve your emotions. Like to relieve your emotions. And therefore help you also over something traumatic. But the first thing is not so much to process it in your mind and process your feelings, but just to make you laugh and to lose the tension. And that's great. That is really great. But I guess the merit of tragedy or drama is that it stays serious and it does not try to make you laugh, but tries to confront you with all these dark feelings, emotions, events, places in yourself. And that gives you the chance to feel it, and then at the place of the actual feelings, then also helps to relieve the tension, process it, and at some point to find peace, to make peace with yourself, with the situation. It's like cinema therapy, and I would say that also comedy and tragedy or drama also, they don't exclude each other. It's not like you have either comedy or tragedy, but you can use both forms together as some sort of a therapy using cinema to help you heal a traumatic event. And I think, and I'm just putting it out there, I might be wrong, but I think the world needs these kind of stories. And something like Hamlet is for the ages, because it grabs us at these feelings. And I think we need, because every generation of humans for all times, for all eternity probably also, unless Jesus delivers us, the whole universe from evil, but that would be a God thing, and us humans cannot do that. And until that happens, if that happens, I do believe in it, and I have put my hope in this, but still, until this time, we have to find ways to deal with the crap in our world, and cinema therapy, healing with story is a great way of doing this, and we all need these stories updated in our lifetime for the people now. So I think I got it. I've said everything I wanted to say, I hope. I loved this session, or these sessions, all three parts of it, and I hope you love it too and get something out of it. And with this, I say, have a great day.